Hey guys, it's Drummond. Welcome back to my channel. If you haven't already, make sure you click the subscribe button down below and make sure you follow me on all my other social medias. I have Instagram, Twitter, got a Facebook page as well, and Snapchat. So make sure you check those out. I'll leave them in the links below. But today's video is a little bit more serious, and it's something that I've been wanting to do on my channel for a while because my channel has always been about sharing the deeper parts of me and things that I know other people might be struggling with. And I just wanted to make a video so that other people who have gone through this won't feel so alone. And I want them to know that there is a light at the end of the tunnel because I've gone through it and I've come out the other side. And of course, it's had some damaging effects to who I am as a person, but I feel like it's something that I've lived through and I've grown a lot from, and I hope that anyone who's been through this will also have very similar experiences to me in the healing process. But today's video is about surviving abuse. This is a really difficult topic to talk about just because I feel like there's so many people out there stuck in this situation, and there's really no easy way to get yourself out of that situation. I am going to talk about my story and what I went through and how I got out of it, but I know that this is something that is really hard for people to overcome and get out of. So I don't want people to feel like my way is the only way, and I definitely want people to know that there are people out there who care about you, and you just have to reach out to the right people and people will help you through this. So my first relationship was extremely abusive, physically and mentally. And honestly, you have to realize going into those relationships that those people really know how to manipulate you into feeling like you've done something wrong, or they're really sorry about what they've done to you. And to be honest, they're not. And that's something that you have to realize right from the get-go, that they are not sorry. And the only thing that they're sorry about is if they actually get in trouble for it. And then at the end of the day, they're going to punish you for them getting in trouble for it. So you just have to get yourself out of there. And there have been so many times where I hear stories and I hear people ask and they just go, well, why didn't you get out of that situation? And to be honest, there are 1,000 different things that keep people in these situations. And for me, I was in my first gay relationship and I had sex with him, and I didn't want to be considered one of those gays that sleep around with tons of different people. So I really pushed through thinking that if I just stayed a little bit longer, that eventually he would stop being abusive. And I just didn't want to sleep with anyone else. I wanted to just be with one person my entire life. So I pushed so hard for my relationship to work. And there were so many other reasons that I stayed. One being, when I came out, my dad was not accepting, and I didn't feel like I could come home. It was something that I came out after my second semester in college, and my dad was just not okay with it. And so instead of going home that summer, I ended up moving in with my boyfriend in West Virginia just because he had his own place. And it was just like, okay, I'm going to be around someone who accepts me for being gay. I don't want to be home where my dad tells me I need to go to counseling to be fixed. So I stayed in that relationship way longer than I should have. And I did tons of crazy things for that relationship to make it work, even though there was 1,000 signs telling me that this was horrible and it was not going to work. So it didn't start off really bad. There were really small signs that kind of like pointed towards this relationship being one that was going to end with a lot of physical violence and mental, just him mentally messing with my head. And it just, there was so many different things that I went through and so many things that he said and did that kind of just slowly put me in a situation where I felt like I couldn't really leave. It went from him pushing me or holding my wrists really hard, or like pushing aggressively where it didn't really hurt. It just kind of, you're not expecting someone that's your boyfriend to do that to you. And it just slowly started getting worse to the point where I was sleeping in a different bedroom and I had a bookshelf pressed up against the door so that he couldn't get in. I slept with a knife jammed between the bed and me so that if it got really bad, I'd have something to defend myself with. Thankfully, it never got to that point because I feel like that could have gotten me in a lot of trouble. But there are just so many situations where I didn't feel like I could escape. One being I didn't have a car. So I was 6 hours away from home, away from all my friends. When I moved to West Virginia, the only people I really knew were his friends. And when we'd go out, I wasn't allowed to make new friends. And he had the password to all my social media accounts, to my phone. So I didn't really have any way of like secretly messaging anyone. And then when I did tell my friends and I stayed with him, a lot of them were just like thinking that I over-exaggerated situations, because why would anyone stay with someone who's physically hurt them the way that he did? And there's just so many things that go into it. It's crazy to think about it, because like looking back now, I would never put myself in a situation like that. If I was ever in a relationship now where things got physically abusive or mentally abusive, I would be out in a second. But when I was young, that wasn't something that I was able to figure out. That wasn't something I was able to overcome by myself. It honestly took him physically like strangling me in front of some of my friends. Actually, my friend Trey, the one that passed away last year in a bad accident, I did a video about him on my channel. If you haven't already, definitely check that video out because he was an amazing person. But it took him seeing that happen to me and my friend Brittany seeing that happen to me to actually physically make sure that I was not around him, because before I'd broken up with him several times for him being physically abusive, and it was just my circle of friends were his friends. And it was weird because when we broke up, my friends would hang out with him, and so I would be at my dorm all by myself, and I just felt so alone. So then I'd start hanging out with him there, and then we'd fall back into the cycle of being together again. And it was just a never-ending cycle that I just couldn't get out of until that situation where Trey and Brittany really just pushed him out of my life and made sure that he was not part of my life anymore. But there were definitely times where I lied about how I got bruises. I lied about cuts, and I put makeup on to make sure that people didn't see like black eyes that I had and like hand marks that I had on my neck. And it's scary to think that there are still people out there that are having to deal with what I had to deal with, and they feel just as stuck as I did. And honestly, it's kind of sad when people talk to them as if they're stupid for being in the situation that they're in, because there's a lot of things that the person does to make you feel trapped. And one is just making sure that you really don't have any friends. I had a lot of friends in college. He convinced me to transfer to a college with him. Still don't know why I did that. Glad I did, because I met some amazing friends at that college, the ones that actually pulled me out of that relationship. But still, the fact that there was horrible things that happened that summer when we first met, and then I went back to college in Virginia, and he actually dropped out of college because he wasn't doing well, and he moved in with me into my dorm, which was completely not allowed, but he did it anyway. I could have gotten kicked out of school, or at least gotten in a lot of trouble for having him living in my dorm, but he was using my meal pass. He was hanging out with my friends. I remember one time where we actually went on a hike, and he had asked me how long the hike was going to be beforehand, and I told him probably around 2 or 3 miles. And I remember him getting really upset because he actually drove the trail with his car and found out that it was like 4 or 5 miles long. and he got really angry, ended up hitting me in my dorm room. And this was during fall break, so everyone else was gone. I stayed because he didn't have anywhere to go. So I stayed in the dorm and volunteered to work like a couple hours, like as a monitor for the halls. But I remember him hitting me and me just demanding that he leave, and he wouldn't leave. So I ended up saying, okay, well then I'm just going to leave. So I grabbed some of my things, and as I was like walking out, I got to the steps and he came up behind me and just pushed me down the flight of steps. And honestly, I was in shock, and I was just laying there like, oh my God, I just got pushed down a flight of steps. How the hell did I allow myself to get to this point? And at this point, I was still in Virginia, and I hadn't transferred to West Virginia yet. And it's crazy to think that that could happen, and I managed to still move to West Virginia for this person. But he ended up leaving, thankfully, without my card, so he couldn't get back in the building. And my friends ended up letting him stay with them because they had an apartment somewhere off campus, and they gave him like the code to get in because they were away in Richmond at the time. But he ended up staying because he stayed with them for like a week before I would forgive him. And honestly, like, there was so many situations where I was just like scared for my life. There was another time where he was super mad at me. Apparently I looked at someone or I said something to someone and he didn't like it, and he strangled me in my room. I remember just being scared to death of him. And there were times where like there was tons of things that he did mentally as well, like the monitoring. He created a fake Facebook so that he could flirt with me to see if I would flirt back. He used that against me later. Then there was just tons of other times where I would push him away, and then he would say that I physically like attacked him, and he mentally made me think that I was deserving of some of the things that he did to me. And at some point he convinced me to start putting my money in his bank. Granted, when I was in West Virginia, my bank didn't exist there, and I could have easily opened my own, but he convinced me that I should just put all my money in his banking account because I got a job there that summer. So I remember one time where I was just ready to leave, but I didn't have any money because it was all in his banking account and he wouldn't let me have it. So I ended up having to go to the police station, and I ended up scaring him into letting me have my money back. And I remember this one time his ex invited us over for dinner, and I think the only reason he let me go with him was because he kind of wanted to just like rub me in his ex's face. But his ex actually handed me like a sticky note with his number on it and said, just in case you need it, here's my number. And I think he knew that at that point that I probably had gotten into a few physical altercations with him. There was a time where I got left at the club because he thought that I was flirting with someone, and I ended up having to spend the night at another person's home that let me spend the night. We actually became good friends, still good friends to this day, but I was stupid enough and kept taking this person back. But I ended up calling his ex-boyfriend because we got into this huge argument, and it ended up becoming very physical. And his ex actually drove me all the way back to Virginia, which I was very thankful for. But my boyfriend ended up driving all the way to Virginia and coming and apologizing to me and saying that he'll never do it again and that he was so sorry. And of course, that's what they always say. But yeah, I ended up taking him back and going back to West Virginia, mainly because I also didn't feel like I was very welcomed here at home because my dad wasn't okay with me being gay. And I just felt very uncomfortable being home, knowing that my dad just felt disgusted by who I was as a person. And I was just like, well, at least in West Virginia, I've got friends that accept me for being gay and don't talk to me like I'm the filth underneath their foot. So I ended up going back, and honestly, I don't blame my friends for not believing everything that I told them about all the physical altercations, because I did lie a lot about the intensity of a lot of things. Like, some points I like would have a bruise and I was just like, oh, I like tried moving away really fast and I hit my face, when really it was his fist that hit my face. There was this one time during Thanksgiving where I went to be with his family, and his mom was just like, she came into Thanksgiving dinner and faked having a heart attack because she was just so upset that her son was gay and that he would bring his boyfriend to Thanksgiving and embarrass her. She grabbed the tablecloth and like pulled all the food off of the table. This was at his grandmother's house, and there was tons of other people there from the church too. So she made this huge scene, and he ended up leaving me there. And he ended up driving to his friend's house at the time and left me at the house for 3 hours. So like I was up in the bedroom crying, not knowing what to do because I didn't have a car, and I was just kind of stuck there. And then he ended up coming back and he's like, you have to go. I'll take you halfway, but you have to go. Make sure your sister comes and gets you. And I remember riding in the car, and I was just like, I had my music in, and I was just like listening to Carrie Underwood, and it was like Starts With Goodbye. And I was just sitting there, I was just like, oh my gosh, like I'm so done. I'm like, something better has to come along. I can't keep doing this. But he like pulled my headphones out, and he was like screaming at me and saying, like, pretty much accusing me of being a horrible person for being there when I didn't want to be there in the first place. I was just being there for him. And I was just like, oh my God, I cannot believe you are accusing me of being a horrible person. Your mom's a crazy bitch. And at that time, he like just slammed his fist into my face. And I just remember like starting to bleed all over my clothes. And I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm so done. And then my sister's car broke down, and he ended up having to drive me all the way back to Virginia. He stayed with me. We made up again, and it's just crazy to look back and think of how many times I forgave him for all the horrible things that he kept doing, showing no signs other than just the words he said that he would never do it again. Like, he had anger, and you could just see it in his eyes when it was happening, and it wasn't anything that I could do that would set it off. It was just like, you never knew when it was coming. And he played it off so well in public. Like if he was upset, he would pinch my wrist to where no one else could see it, to where like he would leave bruises. And it's just horrible to think that I went through that, and that there's other people out there that are going through a lot worse. You have to look at it and realize that this person is manipulating you into thinking that there's nothing better out there for you, that this is the best that you can get, and it's not true. There are people out there that will love you for who you are and treat you with the respect that you deserve. So I guess I wanted to make this video for anyone out there that might possibly come in contact with someone who would do this to you, or who's currently in a situation like this and feels like they can't get out of it. The best way to get out of it is to create a support group, either family members or friends, or find a place. My friend Trey, who ended up getting me out of that situation, actually worked at a woman's shelter where he helped women who were in situations like this, and he actually counseled men who were the aggressive people who were hurting the women. And it was just like, it was crazy. I needed him in my life to get me out of that. I actually went on a date with him, and my ex, who I'm talking about here, found out about it and just showed up and sat right beside me in the theaters. And Trey was just like, this is really weird. And Trey ended up like not really being like put off by it, but he was just like, you need to figure out some things with your ex before you kind of talk to other guys. And I just slowly started opening up to Trey and letting him know the things that were happening in the relationship. And he was really helpful to help get me out of that situation. I don't know if I ever felt like I deserved to be hit or talked to the way he did, or made to feel the way I felt when I was with him. But I definitely didn't think that I could get out of that. and I'm so glad that I am out of that. I am so glad that I am the person that I am today, because I would never allow that to happen to me again. I've definitely run into some people who are in similar situations, and I've tried to be helpful. But it's really, you just have to get to the point where you're like, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. And hopefully you get to that point before it's dangerous to you or anyone else in your life. I know that there's women out there who have children that they feel like they have to protect, and it's just a horrible situation to be in. But I hope this video helps anyone that's in that situation, or helps people who might be in those situations in the future. I just want you to know that there are numbers and hotlines out there for people in these situations, and I want you to realize that even if they are monitoring everything that you do, there are times where you can get away with making a call and just getting out of that situation. So don't ever allow yourself to be stuck, and make sure that you get to a place that's safe for you. And if you feel like you're in a situation like this and need someone to talk to, feel free to message me. If you don't feel safe leaving comments underneath this video, make sure that you check out my Instagram. You can private message me there. I would love to talk to you. But I will talk to you guys next week. Bye.